Harrington was asked a couple things. One about like talking about like watching House of the Dragon, and he had said, no, it's just like too close for me. I spent so much time there. He wasn't saying he dislikes the show or anything, but sort of was asked. And so some of the other things he talked about season 8 and then the Snow Show. And so here he is talking about season 8, saying, I think if there was any fault with the end of Thrones is that we were all so effing tired. We could have gone on longer, and so I understand some people thought it was rushed, and I might agree with them, but I'm not sure there was any alternative. I look at the picture of me in that final season, and I look exhausted. I look spent. I didn't have another season in me. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. I think there were mistakes made story-wise towards the end, maybe. I think there were some interesting choices that didn't quite work.
Yeah. This is maybe the biggest omission of all. Right? From season 8 actors, we heard other comments and stuff, but this might be the most clear-cut one of being like from one of the major figureheads in the show and being like, yeah, we didn't land it all. But I think that he brings up a good point. And I know so many people are like, we don't care. You get paid millions of dollars. I do understand that piece of it. Like, we don't care if you're tired, go out there and act. But like, there is.
He was dealing with alcoholism.
Yeah. Well, not just him, though. Think about the costumers and the people who work on set. I don't know if you watched the documentary, but them being out there, for 3 months and then the rest of the shoot taking another 4 months, they were away from their families for like 7 out of 12 months. Now,
I mean, that's part of the gig. Obviously.
It is part of the gig. So I'm not excusing it, but all I'm saying is that, I'm one of those people who said, HBO said, hey, do you want 10 seasons? And they said, no. And then I looked at George R. R. Martin. He said, I need 13 to tell the story I want to tell. And HBO basically gave him a blank check, and Dan and Dave walked away. And we were very upset by that. I still am. However, maybe it wasn't just Dan and Dave wanting to only do Star Wars. Maybe they were looking at the people that they
which they never even ended up doing, by the way.
Yeah, right. But they looked around at the people that they care about, and I'm sure they have great relationships with, and are like, these people are tired. Like, we can't keep going. We cannot. So I don't know. It adds a little bit more of a human element to it. It doesn't excuse the way it's done, because I still think that if you're good enough at your job, you can figure out a way to do it with the timeline that you were given. And also they, I believe, agreed to that 8-season thing and set that out way before all this burnout set in. So it doesn't really excuse much of it, but I don't know. Interesting to see that Kit Harington was willing to say, we were tired. Some of the stuff did not land. It sucks, but like, it is what it is, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And, I mean, we've obviously talked a lot about season 8 on this podcast. But I mean, just to see him sort of, admit and say, some of it was rushed. He was asked about Snow as well, which is kind of also, by the way, he did actually just do something for Game of Thrones. There's like some Game of Thrones mobile game or something.
Oh, it's a new puzzle game. It's
just because he's in the commercial, and it's like, okay, so I mean, like, he did film something new for Game of Thrones. He has some show on HBO that's it's got really good reviews. Industry or something, I think it's called.
Oh, is he part of that? I keep hearing about it. I hear it's really good.
Yeah, because they said,
is he in it, or did he write it, or what?
No, he's in it.
Oh, awesome.
I don't know anything about it, but
it's on my watch list. So
it's apparently really good, and it's getting good reviews, and he's part of it. So, because like the Game of Thrones Twitter retweeted it and was like, hey, go check it out, because it's obviously another HBO show. Cool. So, okay, one other thing here, and this is actually him talking a little bit about Snow. So he says, what I can tell you is that HBO came to me and said, would you consider this? My first reaction was no. And then I thought there could be an interesting and important story about the soldier after the war. I felt there might be something left to say and a story left to tell in a pretty limited way. We spent a couple of years back and forth developing, and it just nothing got us excited enough. In the end, I kind of backed out and said, I think if we push this any further, and keep developing, it could end up with something that's not good. And that's the last thing we all want. Now, I will say this is interesting, because the way George has talked about this and the way other people have talked about this made it seem like it was Kit Harington's idea. That's sort of been the language that has been presented about this show since it was rumored, speculated about, was that Kit Harington was the one pushing for it and writing it, which he does say here. But even like George's blog post made it seem like Kit was the one who was working on it. And then remember, like, Emilia Clarke was actually the one who kind of spilled the beans a little bit.
Which he
to
doesn't
like,
seem super. I mean, he didn't say anything about Amelia, but he's like, I really wish this hadn't got out because it was never something we were confirmed about.
Right. And then I'm sure he was on like a big NDA because remember he had that like Jimmy Fallon interview and he like, didn't really say a whole lot. And then we were thinking, remember there was that convention after House of the Dragon season 1, which he was there. It was like a big kind of Westeros convention. And we were thinking they're going to announce it. They're going to do something. And nothing came of it. And now it seems like it's shelved. But it does seem very interesting because now it totally changes the whole narrative about this show. Because it very much has always been that the way it's been presented to us by George and everybody, at least the way they've talked about it a little bit. And now you look at the timeline where I believe George said something along the lines of, and I can try to pull up the blog post when I post this on YouTube or whatever, but something of like Kit is working on it, as in like we assumed as fans, oh, Kit was the one creating this. Because remember, it was tied to another post that George Martin had made that was like, oh, there's other shows in development. Remember, this was like during COVID. And so one of those things we didn't know at the time was Snow. And so that was kind of like the timeline of this whole thing. But now it's like, oh, HBO went to him and said, hey, we want to do basically a season 9, or we want to do a Snow show. Yeah. So that's, I think, a game changer for this whole thing.
I think what the way I'm deciphering this, sorry, I'm stumbling over my words, is that HBO most likely had this idea, reached out to Kit Harrington. He said he was initially not interested, and then he started to think about it more. My guess is he said, I will agree to think about this as long as I have creative control over the John. Like, it sounds like he wanted more input, and then he went back to the drawing board, and it ended up not panning out. I bet you George was not approached until after they got Kit Harrington to agree.
Right. To say, hey, Kit's on board.
And then George looks at it and says, oh, like they told him, hey, Kit's working on something. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then George saw that way.
If you remember when when we look at the timeline, remember George was in remember he was somewhere and he ran into Gwendolyn Christie, who played Brienne of Tarth.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, I think it was for like maybe a Sandman thing or something, because she was in that. But there's like a picture of him and her standing next to each other. And around that same time, she had said something along the lines of an interview of like, "Oh, I would love to play Brienne of Tarth again."
Mm-hmm.
So maybe like we don't know if she was approached to be like, hey, we're trying to get some people who would be interested in coming back to this. I'm still totally. I mean, on one hand, kudos to Kit Harrington, because if they came to him and they like, we want to do this, and he reads it, he's like, this is just a cash grab and it's going to suck, then by all means push it back. Because if you look at a lot of projects that have taken a long time to get done, like I'd much rather wait for something. I mean, like take like Top Gun Maverick, for example, right? I mean, that movie had been in development for like 30 years. They, hey, we want to do a sequel to Top Gun, and kept doing it and kept pushing it and stuff. And Tom Cruise was like, well, it never felt right. And then it finally did, and it was freaking amazing. And it's like one of the best movies ever made. So, you can wait, and then you can do it. So, yeah, I mean, will we see Snow? Probably. Seems like right now he's kind of busy with the industry. He was.
I don't think so. I don't think it's ever gonna happen.
Oh, I think we will.
Nah, I don't think so. I think also the way he said,
I still think we will.
I don't really want it all that much now.
I do want it.
I know. I think also in a way he said in a limited way. Is probably hinting at my guess of it being more of a character-driven show of just Jon and his after Westeros life. I think that was probably what it was supposed to be, but I don't know. It seems like he's basically saying that there wasn't enough there, and I don't know. He seems very wishy-washy with his relationship with the show. And I'm fine with that. Like, I don't hold it against him, but
it's such a big part of his life. I mean, you look at a lot of people. I mean, a lot of the Harry Potter actors really haven't done much outside of that, because they were all kid actors, so it's a little different.
Yeah.
But but he's, I mean, in a way, he started when he was young. I mean, it took a long time, like 10 years to do all this stuff. So, I mean, that's long. 16 when he started. Yeah, I mean, even if you look at some of like the Marvel actors, right? I mean, it's like, man, like what's Chris Evans, who plays Captain America. He's done interviews before where he's just like, I mean, you sign up for like years and years worth of stuff.
Yeah. I also loved in that interview. He was like, I'm not going to pretend like Marvel was some like artistic change of pace or something. When Marvel calls, you answer the phone and you take the job. That's what he said. Basically.
I know, but now now that he was supposed to be part of Blade, and that movie has had like 18 different directors.
Yeah, it ain't happening.
I don't think it's gonna happen, which is crazy. How could you not? I don't know.
I mean, as long as Kit's been smart with his money, him and
Sure.
him and Ygritte should be just fine. So